Welcome to Creative Piecemeal. I'm Tammy Takaishi, a board-certified music therapist. Join me each week as a new guest from across the fine and creative arts spheres shares struggles, triumphs, laughs, words of wisdom, and more in authentic, thought-provoking, and inspiring interviews. Hello and welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. Today I'm with Carly Piersol. She is a Philadelphia-based photographer specializing in portraits and branding. And you can check out her website in the show notes. But I'm so excited to get to know Carly and have you all get to know Carly as well. So welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Welcome. I'd love to get started with your origin story. You know, what made you first pick up a camera and go into this?
Oh my gosh. Well, so there are a couple of documentarians in my family. My paternal grandfather loved making like home family videos. My mom had a film camera and always brought it to like our shows and performances and things. And we always used to tease her because every single time she'd be like, oh, I brought the camera. And then the film would come out like jammed or like, she's like, oh, I forgot the flash. So yeah, I was always sort of surrounded by it, but it wasn't until I turned 12, my uncle was in town and he's a very creative guy. He's always like, sort of got his fingers in multiple like crafty artsy pots. Like my mom has many pottery pieces that he's done when he was in the pottery phase of his life. And at that particular point in time, he was taking a photography class. And so at 11, my dad had passed away quite suddenly. And, my mom, I'm one of three. My mom was raising three children on her own. And I think something she did really beautifully was ask for lots of different adults to come into our lives and support us. And my uncle was one of those people. So he came to visit and he was taking this photography class at the time and was super into it. And he turned to me and he was like, let's go on a photo walk. And I was like, what is a photo walk? Okay. And my mom dug out her film camera and off we went. And so he taught me all about the very basics of film photography and like aperture and shutter speed. And I remember taking my first photo, my first like real intentional photo was of a magnolia bloom on our street. And I clicked the shutter and it was like, done, sold. This is it forever for me. I'm good. And what was also pretty incredible is that like, I enjoyed it so much. This ability to see something beautiful or experience something beautiful and the ability to capture it and hold on to it, especially, I think that felt so impactful, especially after such a huge loss. And of course, it didn't hurt then when my uncle went and developed the film and called my mom and was like, Marian, you gotta keep her doing this because these are really, really good. She's already got an eye. And so from that point on, I think my mom may have regretted giving me her old film camera because it was very much like, okay, mom, here are 10 rolls of film. Like 3 of them are of the same flower. I just wanted to test, like what happens if I do this? What happens if I change this? She's like, why am I paying so much for like CVS or Walmart or whoever to like develop all this film? And so she ended up a few years later, getting my stepdad a digital camera. And he did not see that for a few years until I got my very own. So I was definitely it was something that felt uniquely mine at a time when I really needed something to be able to express myself. And yeah, I went to college for photography and communications up at Syracuse and went out into the world and was like, okay, let's, whether I've held a full-time job or not, I've always been shooting since that first day.
That's excellent. And such a beautiful story. And I love that you were able to use art and find a medium that worked for you to connect and find yourself during a really transitional time in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, my growing up, my family was always very artistic. My mom insisted that we all learn how to read music. So we all grew up playing piano or other instruments. And I think, my sister is an actress. My brother is now a luthier. So he, builds string instruments. So somehow, we've all turned out to be artists, which is amazing. But I think for me, what was particularly lovely about photography is, sort of like I said, it was one thing that we all enjoyed music, and photography got to be my unique thing. And it was, again, just the ability to capture what I found really beautiful or really important in a particular moment. That really connected with me.
Excellent. I would love to talk gear. I don't know much about camera gear, but for the camera aficionados listening in, what are some things that you love? What are some dream things that you'd like to get?
Well, I'm personally an advocate for, the best camera is whatever you have on you. So I shoot a ton with my iPhone when I'm just walking around. For clients, I shoot with the Canon 5D Mark III, and typically like a 24-70 telephoto lens. Just covers a wide range of options. Yeah, I've been shooting Canon for, I think probably over a decade now. I still have that first camera that I shot on, which was a Nikon, I think. I'm going to look that up, actually. So I shoot for clients on the Canon, but in my own spare time, I also have a medium format Hasselblad that I love shooting medium format film. I got into that when I was a photo assistant for Jamie Beck, and she loved shooting like medium and large format film. And I just found it really beautiful. And I was like, okay, I want to test this out. I want to try it. And I totally fell in love with it. I think personally that shooting film makes me a better photographer overall, because, with digital, you have as many gigabytes, as many images as your camera can hold. And so you don't have to be choosy. You don't have to be picky. And with film, you really have to think about like, okay, I have 16 frames. I have 24 frames. What am I trying to capture here? What story am I trying to tell? And it really makes you slow down and think in a way that, I think overall just makes you a better photographer.
Excellent. I'm just curious if you mentioned Jamie Beck, and I'm wondering, because I follow a photographer on Instagram named Jamie Beck, and I'm wondering if it's the same person.
Is she based in Provence?
Right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love her work.
She has really, talk about someone who has followed their dreams. When in New York, she was working with some really big luxury brands. I got to be on the set of some truly incredible shoots. She loved being like big and fantastical. And I think as she tells it, maybe a few years after I left her studio, she was on a plane somewhere and there was a lot of turbulence. And she was like, I have never lived in France. What happens if I die in this moment? And I've never lived in France. And so she moved with her husband to Provence. And it has really created such a shift in her work. She now, for listeners who don't know, she creates these beautiful, beautiful still lives in her home. And they're very painterly and very, very thoughtful and artistic. And I think there's a clear through line from her fashion and luxury brand work to what she's doing now. But she does seem just much happier being in France. I think when I worked with her, it was sort of the height of girl boss hustle culture. And I think she was sort of a perfect example of that. But that's a really stressful way to live, especially when you're taking on a brand new employee for the first time, when you are, also at the time newly married. It was a lot to manage. And so I'm super happy for her that she's like made all these choices, and I love following her and her work.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you've been feeling burned out, stressed, overwhelmed, or exhausted, the resources and courses at the Self-Care Institute are here to support you. The Self-Care Institute was founded by Dr. Ami Kunimura and provides support for individuals and organizations with burnout prevention, burnout recovery, and stress management. I've personally taken a few of these courses and found them to be super helpful, both professionally and personally. The care you give yourself matters just as much as the care you give to others. But if self-care is difficult for you, you're not alone. And the Self-Care Institute is here to support your well-being, resilience, and sense of fulfillment at work and at home. For more information, visit selfcareinstitute.com or go to the show notes and click on the link. Excellent. But to get back to you, not that we don't love adoring other photographers, but this is the
happy to talk up a lot of photographers, but yeah.
But I'm curious, what is a dream shoot that you'd love to do? I mean, like, is it like gathering a bunch of puppies, or like flying to another country and photographing like certain things? What would you like to do just for you?
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. That's such a great question. I think one reason I'm sort of drawing a blank is that I did get to do a dream shoot recently where I photographed a brand new independent bookstore that opened near Philadelphia. I'm a huge bookworm. And so that was just a really cool opportunity to shoot portraits of the owner and interiors of the store and think about the story that they're telling and also what they're bringing to this small town. And I would love to do more of that. And in terms of like playful, creative dream shoots I'm doing on my own, I just started a project where I am photographing one book a month. I just call them book portraits. And they're sort of, it's a little more than just like photographing and styling the book in a pretty way. I'm really trying to dig into like what the book is about and how it makes me feel after reading, and bringing that sort of that language into visual language, trying to interpret my emotions as visual elements. So yeah, I've done 2 so far since it's February, if that makes sense. And I'm really excited to continue that. It is, for a while, I was, working full time, shooting on the side, and it was enough working that there wasn't a lot of room that I made for myself for play. And I think that's such an important element of being an artist, is that you have to give yourself room to be a little bored. You have to give yourself room for your brain to just sort of run around and be like, oh, and what if I connected this with this? And what if, actually, I've been thinking about this for a while, but it's been cooking on the back burner and now it's ready. And that's sort of what the book portraits are for me, was just a space to be like, oh, this isn't really for anyone but me. I'm not trying to like turn this into a product or turn this into a book down the line or whatever. This is just like, I love these books. I want to talk about them. Here's a really fun way for me to stretch myself in an area that I am less knowledgeable in, which is product and styling. But yeah, like what a fun opportunity to learn and to futz around, and for there to be like no consequences because it's just for me.
Yeah, I love that. And that gets into such an important part of creativity, is just letting yourself go, not being concerned with what is the final outcome, not being concerned with a deadline or a profit, and just jumping whole self into something and just playing. It gets right back into that inner child and just having fun. And that's so great.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I also just want to acknowledge that like it can be really hard to do. You know, the economy is not great and freelancing is a difficult gig. I think for the first 2 years that I was freelancing, I'm coming up on 3, I was just so stressed about making sure I earned enough money, making sure I could help cover our rent, making sure I could contribute, that playing it was difficult to make room for play because I was thinking so much about like, oh, anything I have to do has to be moving the meter forward, has to be financially viable. And, we've made a lot of changes, namely, moving to a city that is cheaper. And that has certainly helped me have the room to mess around. But I do think I would encourage people as much as they can, especially, freelancers, that to, even in little ways, try and explore, try and play, because I think it just informs your work even more.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus it's so good for your mental health, because if you're only focusing on something for work and not something for yourself, there could be underlying resentment built. And then you go to a job site and you're not able to bring your full self, and maybe you're not as happy, so it's so important to just, give to yourself so that you can then give to others,
That is a great point. Yeah. I very much like put your oxygen mask on first. Yeah. And I think too, there are lots of different ways to play. I think this book portrait series is sort of the first way I've played with photography in a little while. Other ways that I played around or messed around, I got really into embroidery right before the pandemic. My friend taught a class that was embroidery as meditation, which I love. And that was just a really wonderful way for me to be like, okay, this tool that I use to make money in a creative way that I love, I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to pick up this other thing that has absolutely no consequence at all. No one's trying to buy what I'm, making. And also like, I'm not even thinking about selling, I'm not monetizing this hobby. I think it's important to have, if you have difficulty playing in your specific freelancing medium, I think there are lots of ways to go outside that medium and explore as a way to just let your brain relax.
I'd love to talk a little bit about books. I noticed on your website, it says you read anywhere between 100 and more books a year, which honestly, that is amazing. That is superhuman. I love that. Please spill your secrets. But also, what are a couple of books that you read this past year that really impacted you?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, so first of all, secrets. One secret, I guess, that I have, my husband makes fun of me for this all the time. I'm just a speed reader. I don't know how I developed this skill. I just feel very lucky. But yeah, it'll be the kind of thing where he like hands me a book and then like 30 seconds later, he's like, oh, how was it? I'm like, haha, okay. I'm not reading that fast. But yeah, that certainly helps me read quite a few books. I also love the Libby app, where you can connect to any library card that you have and borrow ebooks and magazines and audiobooks. So having it on my phone personally, if I'm standing in line at the pharmacy, if I'm just like on a walk or I stop by a coffee shop, like I'm able to be reading instead of being on Instagram, and certainly I know that reading a book makes me feel better than the, inescapable comparison game that social media creates. But yeah, in terms of books, I'm going to pull up, this is so dorky, but I keep a spreadsheet of the books I read every year.
I love that.
Well, it allows me to keep track of the books I really love, because I also love giving book recommendations. So, when people are like, oh my gosh, yeah, what have you loved recently? I'm like, let me look back at this.
This is also a way that I secretly get book recommendations as well. Or not so secretly, rather.
So I will say, for a long time, I resisted the call of the fairy books, of the A Court of Thorns and Roses. I tried to get into them, and I just couldn't do it. And then a neighbor of mine was reading them as well, and she was like, "Oh, do you want to buddy up?" And I was like, "Okay, fine, let's do it." And then a week later, she was like, "Oh, how are you liking the book? How far are you into it?" And I was like, "I've read all 5." I got into them. So that certainly has been this year's sort of fun series. But one book that I really cannot get off my mind that I read in January is Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I've read a couple of books this year that are just unlike anything else I've ever read. And that is certainly one of them. And I will also say that one, the less you know about it going in, the better. It's a great one to just walk into blind. But yeah, another one that I really loved this year is a book called Anita de Monte Laughs Last. That was about an artist. It was, about a lot of things. It was about the art world and power dynamics and being sort of the other in a world dominated by whiteness and white men. And it's just really beautifully done. I loved that.
Nice. I'm writing down your book recommendations as we speak.
Happy to send them all afterward as well.
Excellent. What's a book that you're looking forward to reading this year?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, more books that we own. My husband and I are currently on a bit of a book challenge. We went through all of our books and we realized that we have hundreds of physical books in our house. And so many of them we bought, got so excited about, put away, totally forgot to ever actually read. And so now we have a little sticker chart going. And when we read 30 books collectively, then we're allowed to go to another bookstore and buy new books. So yeah, I just started The Talented Mr. Ripley. I've never seen the movie. I had never read it before. So I'm excited to finish that. Yeah. And there are just lots of books on our shelves that I'm like, all right, let's tackle it. I picked this up for a reason. Let's do it.
Yeah. Excellent. In terms of being a podcaster, one of the things I get to do is interview authors. So sometimes they'll send me their books literally months ahead of time, which is great. But then it's like, I can't talk to anyone about this book because it's not out yet. I'm like, have you read? Oh, it's not out. Just kidding. Like, what are you reading? Well, actually.
Yeah. What are ones coming up that you're excited about?
Well, there's this author named Paulette Kennedy, and she writes Gothic fiction. And I want to say this is her 4th or 5th book now. I've lost count. That's coming out. And they're just beautiful. Just absolutely fantastic. They're all their own separate story, but some of them link a little bit. She's probably most well known at this moment for The Devil and Mrs. Davenport.
What a title.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately I'm like, done. Okay, great. Adding to the list.
Yeah. And I love it. It's like Gothic fiction, speculative fiction, and she's just, I just love it. Her story is one in which she always wrote, but, got a late, quote unquote, late breakout into the writing world, didn't get published until her mid 40s, which is honestly not late at all, but you know how society makes it feel.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And just been on fire ever since. So I highly recommend. She does have, like I said, several books already out, but I'm very excited about her upcoming one, The Artist of Blackberry Grange.
Oh, okay.
Based on the content and the style of the book. So.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Plug for Paulette.
Yeah. Can't wait to read your stuff.
But I love that, as a creative person, Carly, that you do playful things and you read and you said you embroider and you just sort of really tap into a creative side that's not just photography, because I think it really does inform your work. I mean, I've only seen a few portraits and things, but I can definitely tell you bring so much passion, so much creativity, so much love to the work that you do, and wondering, like, what sort of advice do you have for people wanting to get into photography to which they can then love it the way you love it?
Oh, well, first of all, I mean, what you're saying is so kind and I really appreciate it. Thank you. I think you've sort of hit on something really crucial when you said that you can see that the love that I bring into the work, because for me, that love is not just love of photography. It's love of my subject. I think it is so important to really feel with and for whoever you're photographing. And in the realm of work that I do, which is, sort of business portraiture, professional headshots, things like that, you are really trying to capture this person as they are in this moment, and also pull out what is true and authentic about them and what is really beautiful about them. That same uncle who taught me how to shoot a camera said to me that a photographer's job is to look at the ordinary and make it beautiful. And I think that is so crucial. I think a lot of people get into photography and what they want to do is photograph the most beautiful people, the most beautiful things. And that's a really fun element of photography. But what I personally have grown to love is taking your average everyday people, not your models, who are also lovely, but just people who aren't necessarily in front of the camera all the time, and bringing out what is beautiful about them and making them feel really seen and celebrated in that moment. So that, I think that bringing the love into your work in that way is such a crucial part of what makes my work mine, I think. But generally, advice for people who want to get into photography, again, I think the best camera is the one you have on you. You don't need to get into super fancy gear right away. And also, unfortunately, photography can be prohibitively expensive hobby. And so, if you can find little 35 millimeter film camera at a thrift store, if you can use your smartphone and get smartphone lenses, or, work with what you have and what's accessible to you, because the important thing about photography is your eye. So I would say, take in a lot of photography, figure out what you like and what you are drawn to and what speaks to you. And I think also, learn the basics. You want to learn the rules because you have to know them in order to break them intentionally. And that's a big part of it, is just training your own eye to be able to see, oh, okay, I'm seeing this scene, when I lived in New York, we all love taking New York City photos. New York is a beautiful city architecturally. You can't escape it. But what is it that you see as a photographer in your area that makes, even though you and millions of other people might be looking at the same view, what makes your perspective special? And I think that's what training your eye is all about, figuring out what your voice is.
I love that. And that can transcend across so many creative arts, whether it's painting, music, photography, sculpture, etc. It's the artist themselves that brings the beauty to that and makes it different. You can look at a painting of a flower, but it's going to be different depending on who paints it,
Exactly. And I think too, you can look at a flower and be like, oh, that flower is pretty in terms of photography, click, done. But what are you saying other than, I saw this and it's pretty? And I think that's sort of what my uncle was getting at, is that it's more important to look at something and be like, okay, why is this pretty? Why am I enjoying this? Let me dig deeper into that. What about it? Is there one aspect of it that I want to capture or emphasize? Yeah. And I think, learning what your story is. And I think, for me, it's very much a story of warmth and acceptance and celebrating who you are.
Excellent. So the creative process obviously looks different from person to person, but in your current iteration of the creative process, what is something that you absolutely love?
Oh, one thing I really love, and this is specifically for my branding clients, as we are working through, what their brand is and what they are trying to say to the world and what makes them stand out versus other brands in the same industry. I would love the moment where I get to turn all the words that they've given me into visuals. So we have a planning call and I reveal a mood board. And like every time people are just like, wait, what? How did you? That's exactly, and it's so exciting because, that's a skill that I have developed over the years that I don't think about. I'm like, oh yeah, you make a mood board, duh. But I don't think about the fact that a lot of people don't necessarily have the skill to discern, I like this visual thing, it's pretty, versus I like this visual thing because it speaks to me and what I am looking for in the world or the story I am trying to tell to the world. And so it's always sort of this like little abracadabra moment of like, okay, you have told me all of this information. I have translated it into this. And now this is what we're going for with your shoot. And that's also just it's really fun for me. I love looking at photos and like researching through images. And it gives me a really good sense of, based on their reaction, based on different images that they're drawn to in particular, a very good sense of what we're doing moving into their photo shoot. So I think we both get to walk away feeling very confident about the shoot that's coming, because I have a better visual sense of like, okay, this is what they want to capture. This is what we're going for. And I think they feel more confident because they're like, okay, wow, this person really sees me, understands where I'm coming from. And I know that I'm in good hands moving forward. So yeah, that's really fun.
And it seems really fun to make. It seems like it'd be really fun to make a mood board, getting creative with that, whether it's a digital mood board or a physical one, and, encapsulating your clients' wishes in that way.
Yeah, it is. For my clients, it's always a digital mood board. Shout out Canva. Sponsor this podcast. So yeah, it's a lot easier to pull in different elements and, even things that aren't photos, like different organic shapes or modern lines or, different fonts, different colors that they send me. But I admit that I am also just in the habit of making mood boards, period. My older sister and I have a New Year's Day tradition of making a vision board for each year. And I mean, that is like pure physical. We are like cutting magazines. We are gluing on cardboard. Yeah. And it's really, we have each like kept the last, oh gosh, how long have we been doing this? Probably like 10 years, maybe even more than that. And so we've kept, all the past years. And it's amazing to look back and be like, oh, wow, that thing that I thought was such a far off dream, that came true for me. That happened. Like, my sister is a little more like woo-woo manifest energy than I am personally, but it still is pretty amazing to be like, wow, okay, in 2018, I put this thing on my mood board and I thought like, oh, big dream. Okay, we'll see if we get there this year. And then like 3 years later, that comes to pass. And it feels natural and understandable because I've progressed that far. And something that I think it is really hard to do when you are freelancing or in business for yourself is to make that time to look back on how far you've come. Because you're always looking like, okay, what's next? What's next? What's the big, like, what's the next dream? What's the next milestone? And so this is just a really lovely sort of philosophical look back into like, oh, wow, this seemed so unachievable and so like, oh, shoot for the stars. And now I'm doing it. Like, how crazy is that?
Oh, I love that so much. And I'm a huge fan of vision boards. I've made them a couple of times in my life. And I love that you do that yearly. I might steal that idea, not gonna lie.
Absolutely, go for it.
It's so awesome. So I'm going to have one more question for you.
Sure.
Would you like a serious question or a fun question to end it?
Oh, I have to choose. Yeah, let's do a fun question.
Okay. What is, assuming that like you had all of the cooking skills in the world, what is something that you would bring to a potluck?
Oh man. Okay. Well, oh man. If I had all the cooking skills in the world, what comes to mind right now is probably not appropriate for a potluck. My friends are making us like a proper English Sunday roast in a few weeks. So that is very top of mind for me because I'm really excited. Oh man. This is not a difficult dish to make, but it's one that like I love having at any get together, and it's just a good spinach artichoke dip. I am a sucker for it. So I think like the platonic ideal of a spinach artichoke dip, that would be my go-to potluck dish.
That sounds fabulous. Now I'm hungry for that.
Just out of curiosity, what was the serious question?
Oh, it was a very serious question. It is, and you're welcome to answer it if you're interested. And it is, what does living a creative life mean to you? I know there's some gravitas there.
Yeah, for real. No wonder people go for potluck questions. I think living a creative life is about embracing openness, embracing open-mindedness, embracing just keeping your heart wide open. Because I think, there are lots of ways that one can be creative that are sort of the stereotypical ways, being an artist, being a musician, being a writer. And I think there are lots of people who look at that and are like, well, how can I be creative if I don't have those skills, if I don't have those talents? And I think, especially right now, being creative is about being open and loving and creating connection and community and allowing yourself and others the complete freedom to do that and to play.
Oh, I love that. Fantastic answers all around.
Thank you. Yeah, around the same weight as the spinach artichoke dip, I think.
Of course. Well, Carly, thank you so much for being on the show. Listeners, please check the show notes. And if you live in the Philly area and or near there, definitely check her out. Her photography is amazing. She's got a heart of gold, and please give her all of your business. As always, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Creative Piecemeal. We hope today's episode left you feeling inspired. This podcast is independently created and produced by the host, Tammy Takaishi. More details about today's guest can be found in the show notes, along with links to the podcast's socials, merch store, and ways to support arts organizations AHA Broadway and New Normal Rep, both near and dear to Tammy's heart. Don't forget to visit creativepiecemeal.com, the official podcast website, where you can leave fan mail, write a review, explore Tammy's blog, and discover the growing collection of episodes. Special thanks to our audio engineer, Alex Repetti. Additional narration by Dante Jace. Let's keep celebrating creativity in all its forms.